greatness and the glory of God shine forth marvelously in all his works, and is to be read above all in the open book of the heavens. We cannot teach people anything. We can only help them discover it within themselves. I think that in the discussion of natural problems, we ought to begin not with the scriptures, but with experiments and demonstrations. To me, a great ineptitude exists on the part of those who would have it that God made the universe more in proportion to the small capacity of their reason than to his immense, his infinite power. The Bible shows the way to go to heaven, not the way the heavens go. And believe me, if I were again beginning my studies, I should follow the advice of Plato and start with mathematics. Mathematics is the language with which God has written the universe. Man kann einen Menschen nichts lehren, man kann ihm nur helfen, es in sich selbst zu finden. The sun with all the planets around it and depending on it can still ripen a bunch of grapes as though it had nothing else in the universe to do. Niranam e pur si muove. It still moves. What Galileo purportedly muttered after torturers forced him to recant his theory that the Earth orbits the sun. Who indeed will set bounds to human ingenuity? Who will assert that everything in the universe capable of being perceived is already discovered and known? In the future, there will be opened a gateway and a road to a large and excellent science into which minds more piercing than mine shall penetrate to recesses still deeper. You cannot teach a person anything. You can only help him find it within himself. The increases of known truths stimulates the investigation, establishment, and growth of the arts. The sun, with all he planets revolving around it and depending on it, can still ripen a bunch of grapes as though it had nothing else in the universe to do. Measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not so. They seem to forget that the increase of known truths stimulates the investigation, establishment, and growth of the arts, not their domination or destruction. Et pour si move, albeit it does move. What Galileo purportedly muttered after torturers forced him to recant his theory that the Earth orbits the sun. To be humane, we must ever be ready to pronounce that wise, ingenious, and modest statement, I do not know. Names and attributes must be accommodated to the essence of things, and not the essence to the names, since things come first and names afterwards. It is surely harmful to souls to make it a heresy to believe what is proved. In the sciences, the authority of thousands of opinions is not worth as much as one tiny spark of reason in an individual man. See now the power of truth, the same experiment which at first glance seemed to show one thing, when more carefully examined, assures us of the contrary. By denying scientific principles, one may maintain any paradox. With regard to matters requiring thought, the less people know and understand about them, the more positively they attempt to argue concerning them. In regard to the philosophers, if they be true philosophers, i.e., lovers of truth, they should not be irritated that the earth moves. Rather, if they realize that they have held a false belief, they should thank those who have shown them the truth. And if their opinion stands firm that the earth doesn't move, they will have reason to boast than be angered. Measure what can be measured and make measurable what cannot be measured. Nature does not act by means of many things when it can do so by means of a few. It is a beautiful and delightful sight to behold the body of the moon. There are those who reason well, but they are greatly outnumbered by those who reason badly. Our wine is sunlight held together by water. I wish, my dear Kepler, that we could have a good laugh together at the extraordinary stupidity of the mob. What do you think of the foremost philosophers of this university? In spite of my oft-repeated efforts and invitations, they have refused, with the obstinacy of a glutted adder, to look at the planets or the moon or my glass telescope. The number of people that can reason well is much smaller than those that can reason badly. If reasoning were like hauling rocks, then several reasoners might be better than one. But reasoning isn't like hauling rocks. It's like racing, where a single galloping Barbary steed easily outruns 100 wagon-pulling horses. The sun, with all those planets revolving around it and dependent on it, can still ripen a bunch of grapes as if it had nothing else in the universe to do. The book of nature is written in the language of mathematics. Passion is the genesis of genius. The greatest wisdom is to get to know oneself. All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them. Scripture is a book about going to heaven. It's not a book about how the heavens go. In questions of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual. Mathematics is the key and door to the sciences. Holy Scripture could never lie or err. Its decrees are of absolute and inviolable truth. Surely God could have caused birds to fly with their bones made of solid gold, with their veins full of quicksilver, with their flesh heavier than lead, and with their wings exceedingly small. He did not, and that ought to show something. It is only in order to shield your ignorance that you put the Lord at every turn to the refuge of a miracle. God is known by nature in His works and by doctrine in His revealed word. In the long run, my observations have convinced me that some men, reasoning preposterously, first establish some conclusion in their minds which, either because of its being their own, or because of their having received it from some person who has their entire confidence, impresses them so deeply that one finds it impossible ever to get it out of their heads. The vain presumption of understanding everything can have no other basis than never having understood anything. For anyone who had ever experienced just once the perfect understanding of one single thing and had truly tasted how knowledge is accomplished, would recognize that of the infinity of other truths, he understands nothing. Philosophy is written in that great book which ever lies before our eyes. I mean the universe. But we cannot understand it if we do not first learn the language and grasp the symbols in which it is written. I do not think it is necessary to believe that the same God who has given us our senses, reason, and intelligence wished us to abandon their use, giving us by some other means the information that we could gain through them. Two truths cannot contradict one another. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use,